Netflix is burying its best movies, and they are doing it on purpose. While everyone is scrolling past the same generic action flicks, 5 brilliant films are sitting in the shadows, waiting for someone smart enough to find them. I am talking about a mind-bending sci-fi where proving the afterlife causes mass suicide, a Hindi indie set on a spaceship that recycles dead souls, a forgotten horror about a cursed Polaroid camera, a military thriller that turns ghosts into weapons, and an exorcism film so intense it barely made it to theaters. These are the hidden gems of 2026. Here are 5 extremely underrated Netflix movies you need to watch before everyone else. Forget spaceships with hyperspeed and alien battles. Arati Kadav's Indian sci-fi masterpiece is set on a clunky, low-budget spacecraft named Pushpak 634A, where a lonely scientist named Prahasta spends centuries preparing dead souls for reincarnation. It is poetic, philosophical, and unlike anything you have ever seen. Prahasta's rigid, isolated existence is shattered when a spry new assistant named Yuvishka arrives. She is young, curious, and completely unimpressed by his cosmic bureaucracy. Their conflict is generational and philosophical. Prahasta treats the dead like paperwork, while Yuvishka believes every soul deserves compassion. As they process an endless stream of deceased passengers, the film asks a terrifying question. What if death is just a cosmic DMV and reincarnation is just a form you fill out? The climax is silent and devastating. Prahasta, after centuries of service, finally confronts his own mortality. He realizes he has been so obsessed with the mechanics of death that he has forgotten how to live. The final scene is a quiet, beautiful moment of cosmic acceptance. The payoff is not an explosion. It is an existential sigh. This film proves that Indian sci-fi can be as thoughtful and soulful as anything from Hollywood. You will never look at the afterlife the same way again. Based on Lars Klevberg's terrifying short film, this is the cursed object horror movie that almost never made it to theaters. A high schooler named Bird Fitcher finds a vintage Polaroid camera at a garage sale, only to discover that anyone photographed by it dies within 24 hours. And the ghost in the photos? It is coming for her next. The conflict is a race against time. Every photo Bird takes summons a grotesque, shadowy entity that stalks the subject until they are brutally killed. She and her friends must figure out the camera's dark history before they all become portraits. The film is relentless, using jump scares and creeping dread to keep you on edge. But the real horror is psychological. The camera does not just kill, it exposes your deepest secrets. The climax is a brutal showdown inside a high school, where Bird confronts the entity head-on. She discovers that the camera was once owned by a serial killer who used it to trap his victims' souls. To survive, she must destroy the camera and herself with it. The payoff is surprisingly emotional. Bird sacrifices herself to save her friends, but the final twist reveals that the curse has been passed on to a new owner. This is smart, bloody, and thoroughly underrated horror. Nick Mathieu's directorial debut is a $70 million Netflix original that looks like a blockbuster but feels like a paranoid thriller. A special forces team is deployed to a war-torn European city, only to discover that the enemy is invisible, untouchable, and utterly terrifying. The conflict is brutal and claustrophobic. The soldiers cannot see what is killing them. They can only watch as their comrades drop dead, their eyes turning white, killed by an invisible force that defies physics. A skeptical scientist, Emily Mortimer, is brought in to explain the ghosts, but her science fails spectacularly. The film is a masterclass in tension. Every shadow is a threat. Every silence is a scream. The climax reveals that the ghosts are not supernatural. They are experimental energy weapons gone rogue, killing anything with a heartbeat. The team must engineer a counter-weapon using extreme cold to freeze the entities. The final action sequence is jaw-dropping, with the soldiers using liquid nitrogen to shatter invisible enemies. The payoff is pure sci-fi catharsis. This is the blockbuster Netflix never promoted properly. Imagine a world where science proves heaven exists, and suddenly, millions of people kill themselves to get there faster. That is the terrifying premise of Charlie McDowell's indie sci-fi. starring Robert Redford as the scientist who destroys the world with a single discovery, and Jason Segel as his estranged son trying to pick up the pieces. The conflict is not man versus man, it is man versus meaning. Will Segel arrives at his father's isolated compound, furious at the suicide epidemic his father's discovery has unleashed. He meets Isla, Rooney Mara, a grieving mother he saves from drowning, and together they uncover his father's next horrifying experiment, a machine that records what the dead actually see. But the deeper they dig, the more they realize that proving the afterlife might be the worst thing that ever happened to humanity. The climax is a devastating twist. The afterlife is not heaven, it is an alternate dimension where every regret, every bad choice, and every tragedy can be undone. But this revelation would trigger a second wave of mass suicides. The machine must be destroyed. Will sacrifices himself to save Isla, only to find himself trapped in an infinite memory loop, reliving their meeting over and over. The payoff is haunting. Love, loss, and redemption are all just choices we make, and sometimes the only way forward is to let go. Two priests, one questioning his faith, the other drowning in guilt, must perform a dangerous exorcism on a possessed woman. This is not your average horror film. This is a brutal psychological battle that asks, what happens when the church loses its power over evil? The conflict is internal and visceral. The priests are not just fighting a demon, they are fighting their own demons. The younger priest has lost his faith after a personal tragedy, while the older priest is haunted by a botched exorcism that killed a child. The film explores faith, doubt, and the terrifying possibility that evil might be stronger than God. The exorcism scenes are intense, claustrophobic, and deeply uncomfortable. The climax is a theological nightmare. The priests fail, the demon is too powerful. But in the final moments, the younger priest makes a shocking sacrifice, not to exorcise the demon, but to prove that love and faith still exist. The film ends on a haunting, ambiguous note, leaving you questioning everything. The payoff is devastating and beautiful. This is a horror film for people who care about characters, not just jump scares. These 5 films are proof that Netflix is hiding its best work. From the philosophical mind-bending of The Discovery to the cosmic bureaucracy of Cargo, from the cursed nostalgia of Polaroid to the ghost war of Spectral and the faith-shattering terror of The Ritual, these are the movies that deserve your attention. They challenge you, frighten you, and make you think. That is what great cinema does. If you want to find more hidden gems before they disappear into the algorithm, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me which film you are watching first, and subscribe for more deep dives into the films everyone else is ignoring.